A warm good evening to all of you. Myself, Jisha. I welcome all of you on behalf of the principal and faculty of Srinarayana College, Kollam, to the fifth edition of Agora 2023, an international multidisciplinary webinar series. Our college is affiliated with University of Kerala. This is day 6 and talk number 6 of Agora 2023. Today, our speaker, Dr. Felix Bast, will deliver a talk on NEP 2020, Critical Thinking. Let me introduce our speaker today formally. Felix Bast is a psychologist, author, and a science communicator. Right now, he is a professor and HOD at the Central University of Punjab. Felix Bast obtained his BSc in microbiology from Kannur University and MSc in biotechnology from the University of Madras. Bast completed PhD in marine biology from Kochi University, Japan, with the support of the Japanese government doctoral scholarship. Makes it. He took training at Friday Harbor Laboratories, University of Washington, and Marine Biological Association of UK Laboratories, Plymouth. He was an expedition scientist for Indian Antarctica mission. Bast has in credit 41 Sci-Index journal articles, 10 book chapters, 4 books, and 17 popular science articles and newspaper essays. He served as a guest scientist at Leibniz Center for Tropical Marine Research, Germany. Bast and his team have discovered 7 new species from India and Antarctica. As of 2023, 9 research scholars have been awarded PhD degrees under his supervision, and he served as principal investigator for 15 research grants with a combined amount of INR 2.13 crores. Bast founded Young Academy of India, which is one of the largest young academies in the world, and spread science through his YouTube show named Curiosity. Bast is an elected fellow of the Linnean Society of London and is a member and expert panelist of the International Science Council, Paris. He has received Inspired Teacher recognition from the President of India. On behalf of Srinarayana College, Kollam, and IQAC and Team Agora 2023, I warmly welcome to you, Felix, to start your talk on NEP 2020 critical thinking. Over to you, Felix.
Thank you so much, Professor Jisha, for the introduction. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Sure.
Yes. So today's talk is about the critical thinking. Okay. So this is the second talk I'm talking here in this series, Agora. My first talk was on soft skill, which is like the cousin of the critical thinking, which I talked. I think it's 2 days back, right? And in this talk, I can see that many of my friends are part of the participants because I shared over my Facebook. I can see Shatarupa here and also Monita Thiman and Vinci. Yes, Vinci Brilliant is also. Hello, everyone. So, okay, so what is critical thinking? Right. So, as I can hear, what I learned from my last class here is that you want more discussion. So let's have more discussion. Okay. So I'm going to have a brief overview of the subject now first, and then let's have an extensive discussion. Okay. So I hope more participants are going to join in a couple of minutes time. So the critical thinking deals with thinking critically, as the word name say, right? What is critical? Beware that we are under several biases, okay, and be aware of our own biases is called critical thinking, as simple as that, you know. So unfortunately we don't even do this introspection. Did we err in our judgment? You know, so many of our decisions and judgments are of low quality. The reason is that we are under the subconscious influence of various biases in our thought process. So if you are aware of these biases, then you can make better quality decisions like buying, purchasing something. Do you want to really trust these advertisement propagandas, right? Or voting effectively for a better democracy, you know, or choosing the right partner in your life, you know. So many decisions that we take can be dramatically increased. The decision can be increased substantially, the efficacy of these decisions, if you are aware of the the biases that is actually influencing us. Einstein, he went for a graduation ceremony long back, at the height of his career, and then someone, one of the, the journalist asked him, Einstein, tell us what is exactly the speed of light. He famously said that, well, I don't remember it. It is there in the books. So if you're asking me such questions that is already in the books, the so-called facts, I will not even answer your questions. So look at his response to it. So there are two things now. One is called facts, another is called concepts. So as a teacher, because this is an FDP, as a teacher, we have to focus our attention more on conceptual understanding of the you know, the syllabus, right? So the concepts are the so-called, how will you grade the quality of questions? So some questions are of high quality. For me, a very good heuristics is searching out in the internet. Can this searching out lead to the answer? Then that such questions are of low quality, especially questions directly asking for some facts like who is the president of Peru, one of the Latin American country. You can simply Google it, right? You can find an answer. But conceptual questions are a little bit trickier. You really need a deeper comprehension for it, right? So that is what the difference between learning and education is all about. So education, last time also I spoke about this point. Education is driven by, for the at the end of the course, you will be getting some degree or certificate. So exam is everything, rote learning, memorization of facts. That is what the education is all about. But learning is different. Learning is for yourself. For example, let's learn to swim. It's not about exam, cracking the exam or rote learning. No, learning is actually internal, right? So that is what this critical thinking is all about. It's not about that. It's not about cracking that exam or rote learning for high stakes exams like NEET or JEE. Here comes the NEP 2020, that the document has set in several locations the importance of teaching critical thinking, though the document itself didn't specify what the critical thinking is all about. That is what this talk is about, isn't it? So yes, so NEP is suggesting to teach critical thinking at all points, in the school and also in the higher education, college education, as well as in the higher education institutions. This subject has to be taught. The reason is that we don't even know about the biases that we have. It so many of the biases are under our influence. For instance, let me start directly with one of the very famous bias. Okay, here is an example. Okay, so there's a very famous paper that is done by a veterinarist in Scotland, and he published that finding in a very high impact journal Nature long back in 1960s. And the paper is about the injury, the chance of injury of the cats falling from high rise buildings. What he noticed is that by looking at his registry, that the cats falling from first floor and second floor and third floor, this first floor has a lot more injury than second floor. Then injury is so much lesser for third, fourth. By fifth floor, almost none. No, only one or two cats got injured. So what is actually happening? If I ask this question, I do teach critical thinking in my university at the PhD level. So if I ask this question randomly, anyone would like to say what is happening here among the participants? Any of you have some thoughts about it? Otherwise, let me say what the common answers come in my class. So some people say that, well, the cats get some better reaction time when falls from high-rise building. I mean, higher floors. Like the first floor, the cat, it's so sudden that the cat cannot land in aerodynamically optimal position to reduce the injury. At the same time, the cat falling from fifth floor can land. I mean, it has got more reaction time. You see, it will have around, let us say, 30-40 seconds. So that time is sufficient for the cat to land in a very optimal way so that the injury is reduced. Do you agree with this conclusion? Some students say you want maybe something to do with G force, the gravitational force that the cats can adapt to that force if it falls from high-rise building. So I'll take in a small digression to another such a very famous example. This is of the World War II. The German, the fighter jet, right? So this German aircraft engineers were looking at those fighters, the bomber, right? The jet bombers returning from the war, the war field, right? Then they are looking at where exactly the bullet marks are there, right? Then they found that most of the bullet marks are either on the wings or on the tail, nothing on the fuselage, the engine and fuselage, no bullet marks at all. Most are either on the wings or on the tail. Then these engineers, they recommended this, Nazi, right, Hitler's Nazi regime, that as the most bullet marks on these two parts, let us strengthen it. Let's make it more reinforced. Are you getting? Better quality steel, and let's make it much more stronger. They did it. Then the result was catastrophic. The Germans lost that war. Many people say that this is the one of the blunders that the Germans ever did it. And do you know why this decision was so very bad? Yes, the bias is something called survivorship bias. Many of the scientists like you and me make this mistake in our judgment of the lab works. The data interpretation, this is such a very, very common cognitive bias, because we are looking only at the survivors. We tend to completely avoid non-survivors. Any guess what is happening? That is a clue. We tend to disregard non-survivors and we look only at those survivors. Let's come back to this fighter jets. The aircraft engineers are only looking at those aircrafts that actually made the return journey to the airfields. Are you getting the point? And those who really made had this bullet mark. So the correct interpretation would have been those bullets striking onto the wings and tail are not lethal, no problem. But bullets striking on the fuselage is so much lethal that the flights are gone. It crashed. It couldn't able to come back to that field. That would have been the correct interpretation if you actually consider survivors and non-survivors, the pooled data, right? You're looking only at selective data. This is the problem with most of our judgment. We don't see the whole thing. We just see some of the survivors. Are you getting the point? So this is the bias, so-called survivorship bias. We look only the survivors. Now, can someone here, any of the participants, answer what really happened with the cat issue? What was that biased judgment in that cat? Anyone, please unmute yourself and ask. Answer, what is happening with that cat? Why is it that the cats falling from first floor has, they're actually the injury rate is high, while cats falling from fifth floor, the injury rate is less. Anyone, please unmute and tell me that answer. I've given you the clue. Don't be shy. It could be wrong answer. I don't mind. Please unmute and ask. Tell me the answer.
The cat took time to get acclimatized.
No, that is what I told, right? That is one of the wrong answer. The students always say acclimatization of the, that is not. It's a survivorship bias. The name says that the clue to the answer, survivorship. Yes, please say. I'm sure one of you know the answer. It's so simple. What is happening?
Maybe based on the level of perception.
Not really. It's so complicated you're making it. It's actually very simple, okay? In in reality, look, okay, this is in Kollam, right? So if you have a cat, I love cats. I really like this example. So if you have a cat and unfortunately the cat died, okay, with the fall from fifth floor, the cat died. Will you take the cat to a veterinarian? No, right? Only if the cat is survived, you take the cat to the veterinary. So if you're making these kind of paper only based upon the veterinarist data, that is basically the registry at the veterinarist, it's already selective data. It's not the whole picture. Cats, it's not that the injury is less when the cats are falling from high-rise building. It's just that they're not surviving, they're dead. Of course, the injury is less when the cats are falling from fifth floor. The reason is that cats don't even make it. They simply die. Are you getting the point? It's that simple. So this survivorship bias, friends, is so very common. Similar to the survivorship, we have several other well-known biases. So one way to arm ourselves to make better quality decisions and not to be fooled by these advertisement gimmicks and political propaganda and all those algorithms trying to fool us is by be aware of these biases. There are well over 250 biases. I have, with example, I have put all these biases, most of these biases into the life skill, the part one, the critical thinking. So critical thinking is about the biases, friends. So be aware of these biases. Another bias I will introduce here, let us say the example, right? I did my PhD in Japan. Japan is G7 country, one of the richest country. Though the size of Japan is only the Uttar Pradesh, but in GDP it is the second, third largest in the world, right? And 47 Nobel laureates in Japan alone. It's big giant. Now, if you go to Japan, you see that breast cancer rates are so very high in Japan. And not just in Japan, any of these G7 country like Germany you go, France you go, or Canada or UK or Australia, New Zealand, wherever this G7 country, the cancer incidents are extremely high. And what is really happening? Why this rich country, the cancer is high compared with developing countries like us? And if I say this to my class, over the years, the pattern is very clear. If I ask the students to tell me what is happening, then the students will they will come up with very, very imaginative reasons, right? Very appealing stories, appealing narratives, like, for instance, that the rich people have sedentary lifestyle. They drive big car, four-wheel drive. They don't walk or cycle around, or they eat junk food, right? They don't eat the proper food. They're fast food or junk food. By the way, in Kerala, there has been a very interesting junk food tax, I remember. And the government defined what the junk food, and some examples of the junk food: pizza, macaroni, pasta, sandwich, burger, all these are junk food. While our masala dosa is not a junk food, or the biryani or samosa is not a junk food. Again, that is a biased decision, right? Extremely biased. That is not what the junk food is all about. Anyway, so what is happening here? The G7 countries and a high cancer prevalence. So it is basically an association or a correlation. Of course, there is a correlation with the G7 countries or rich countries in general and the cancer incidence. But what actually causing it? Correlation doesn't mean causation. So what is actually happening in this case is not about their lifestyle, not about their eating habits. It's just that in Japan, post puberty, every single female have to undergo the annual mammogram screening, which is completely free and it's compulsory. More test means more cases, and in cancer, as you know, early diagnosis is the key. So though these countries have a lot of cancer incidents, people don't die that much in those countries because they detected at younger age so that they can get proper treatment for it, you see. So this kind of bias, this is a special cognitive bias called illusory correlation, or confounding. It's also known as statistical confounding. Two variables, if you see some correlation or association, you can only conclude that these two variables are correlated or associated. You can never ever conclude that one is causing effect on another, or one variable is causing the effect on the another, right? Or explains the another one. Here is another example. I do run this curiosity, as the Professor Jisha said. In my channel, I have this science show called Curiosity, where I dissect many of these new papers published in 1 month before, right? Previous month. So one of the many episodes, I did cover this, this famous bias of this illusory correlation. One of the episode I covered about video gaming and chance of depression. There is a very interesting high quality correlation that those people who do a lot of video gaming as well as social media use, there are two independent studies. Now, one study looked at video gaming with depression. Another study looked at the social media use, especially Facebook use, with depression. Both the studies looked at the teenage population. So teens who does a lot of social media also tend to be depressed. And suddenly there is a deluge of media saying about this particular study, quoting about it, and then concluding that social media is causing teenage depression. That is wrong, plainly wrong. Why? Friends, this is correlation, right? It's about association. It could be vice versa too. Think about it. Depressed teenagers may be more prone for social media use. Depressed people may be more prone for video gaming. It could be absolutely possible. Here is another example, another famous study in the US. They looked at ice cream sales and cases of drowning, by the water sports. So whenever there is a drowning case higher, and so as the ice cream sales, so whenever ice cream sales are high, you will see that cases of drowning, that's death by the water, is also high. What is happening? Can any of the participants tell me the right answer? This is also an example of illusory correlation. Please unmute and speak out. Anyone? Whenever ice cream sales in the United States are higher, so as the case of drowning. Am I audible? I just want to make sure all is well.
Yes, sure.
Tell me, please, anyone, please unmute and say. It's very simple. I have already given you two examples of the illusory correlation.
Maybe ice cream seller is near the water body.
No,
I don't know.
no, there is something else is happening here. There might be a third factor. What is that factor? Causing effect on both.
Summers may be the reason.
Yes?
Summers, like
Summer
during
season,
summer.
correct. Who is this? What is your name?
Anu.
Anu, yes, Anu, you're absolutely correct. Season is the answer. That is actually the seasonality. What time of the month in the year is, right? In summer, ice cream sales are high, so as the drowning is high. You see, so it's not that ice cream is causing people to die by drowning. That is not the case at all. It's by a third variable causing effect on both of our variables together, the so-called lurking variable, the confounding variable. You see, so that is why whenever you see that two things are correlated, another example would be people who tend to eat a lot of salad tend to live longer. The longevity of people who eat salad is also high. What does that mean? Salad causes people to live longer? Not really. See, eating salad is just one of the healthy habit. So people who eat salad also tend to have better overall health measure. For example, they don't drink much alcohol, they don't smoke, and people who eat salad also tend to eat healthy in general and exercise in general, prioritize sleep. So everything comes together. You see, that is also an example of illusory correlation. So likewise, there are several cognitive biases we have to be aware of. The only option for us is to learn about cognitive biases. Okay, uh, maybe the mother of all cognitive biases is called confirmation bias. So, as the name says, confirmation bias, we are looking for pieces of evidences to confirm what we think is true. For instance, if you are a vegetarian, you know, then if I present you few essays, like online random essays, one essay say why vegetarianism is good for planet Earth, then chances are high that as a vegetarian you will be reading it carefully because you already believe that vegetarianism is good. You are a vegetarian, right? You will finish that essay or the article, no problem. It's a long read, no issues. You will completely finish it. I'm giving you another article that says that why vegetarianism is good for planet. Again, true. It's not biased at all. That is absolutely correct because the vegetarians, the carbon footprint is far lesser than non-vegetarian. You will be finishing it because you are very happy to read that kind of stories, right? All right, now I'm giving you another article. Let's say why vegetarians die younger. That is also true. Longevity, if you look, countless examples of longevity studies have shown that vegetarian diet is linked with lesser longevity, shorter life duration. You might be started reading and then you might say, oh well, I don't agree with this conclusion. Let me not read it. No, you will not even finish reading it. Another article comes that says why vegetarians are more prone for depression. Again, true, but you will not read it. Another article say why human being as a species. If you look back in history, we were not vegetarian. Vegetarianism is something new in our human evolutionary pattern. You will not read it. This is what is happening here. Confirmation bias, friends. Most of the scientists in the world, we are not trying to test a hypothesis. We are trying to prove a hypothesis. For instance, a drug is working. We are looking, for instance, you are looking for like a effect of Tulsi on COVID-19. I want to prove that the Tulsi works for COVID-19. Then I will be looking out for certain pieces of evidence that substantiate my prior belief. So testing a hypothesis is different from proving a hypothesis. Two things are completely different. Ideally, scientists like you and me should try to test a hypothesis, the so-called statistical hypothesis testing. Trying to prove a hypothesis is the hallmark of confirmation bias. You cherry pick instead of the whole picture. You only take out certain pieces of evidence from your raw data and then include in your report. You tend to suppress all other pieces of evidences that are against your prior hypothesis. For instance, anti-cancer. One guy says that, well, he has some plant extract against breast cancer, right? So he tested it for 1,000 breast cancer patients, let's say, right? This his extract. Then what he found is that this cancer didn't improve for 990 patients, but somehow this 10 patients of breast cancer subsided. So though his initial data has all the 1,000 patients, when he tried to report it, he suppressed all 990 and he claimed that I did this testing on 10 patients and all 10 patients the drug worked. Remarkable, and therefore it's 100% success rate. So that kind of bias, a subset of cognitive bias, the confirmation bias, is known as cherry picking. You pick not the whole thing, but instead you're selectively picking certain pieces of evidence that substantiate what you want to prove it, what you believe in. So friends, in science, there is no belief at all. It doesn't matter. Do I believe in climate change or not? What my take on vaccine? It doesn't matter. Do I believe in vaccine? Does it work or not? Vaccine works. GMOs. What is my view on GMO? It doesn't matter really. I might be anti-GMO or pro-GMO, but GMOs are safe. That is already known in sciences. Right? So science deals only with objective truth where the belief has no role. So cognitive biases, all these biases, friends, beware of your belief, right? Whenever you believe something is truly close to your heart, and if somebody start questioning that belief, there is another cognitive bias called, yes, so it's the cognitive bias in which you violently protest when someone start questioning your cognitive belief. There is something called cognitive dissonance. For instance, in during the COVID-19, I had this experience in my family WhatsApp group that you might remember that our honorable Prime Minister asked us to clap as well as bang on to the plates, right? To say thanks to the health workers, right? So his intention was absolutely genuine, right? We have to say thanks and we cannot go there to say it, right? We just have to clap or bang on to the plate. So no problem at all. But in my family WhatsApp group, I could see that one of my uncle, he said that, well, it's causing some cosmic energy and this cosmic energy is killing this coronavirus. Oh, come on, that is completely pseudoscience. I protested. I said that, well, uncle, you're wrong. Then the uncle suddenly, immediately, uncle responded to my comment that elders in this group must be respected. Classic example of cognitive dissonance, right? So there is nothing written on stone in science. Be always open for criticism. The critical thinking is all about criticizing your core belief, friends. Nothing is written on the stone in sciences. So I can tell you another of my experience is that a few years back I was just walking around the streets of Connaught Place. Then I saw an interesting article, propaganda poster. Of course, the poster is propaganda. The posters say that, well, please read our holy book, no revision for the last 600 years. I don't want to create a controversy by telling which book is that, but it doesn't matter. 600 years, no revision, written on stone, belief unchallenged. Nobody can question those beliefs. That is not science. And what if you question those beliefs? They will kill you. They will cut your throat. In science, there is nothing like that. I was just imagining, what if the science textbook were like that holy book? 600 years, no revision. In our school, friends, we will still be teaching our kids that miasma is creating, like black magic is creating diseases. Because germ theory of disease is new. Germs don't even exist. Bacteria don't exist. If you turn back 600 years, forget vaccines, no antibiotics. Not even the heliocentric world, right? It is a new one. The Copernicus, right? He started after 14th century. Yes. So before that, it was geocentric. We will still be teaching the kids the geocentrism, right? So these kind of biases are everywhere. So beware of anything which is based on the belief. Another example would be, not invented here bias. So many of my videos in my YouTube is all about these biases. For instance, during the COVID-19, there was so much of hesitancy to masks. And many people say, well, why we Indians have to wear mask? Mask is not invented in India. Chinese also said the similar case, no, mask is not Chinese. Why should we wear it? Something Western. you know, not invented something here doesn't make that it's not working, or vice versa too. Something invented in our home place, wherever you are in, doesn't vouch on the efficacy. For example, lice invented everywhere in the universe, right? Wherever you're there, you can see lice. Does it vouch the efficacy? Chewing pan and spitting on the road, invented in some place in the world. So does it vouch that it's fine? Not really, right? So all these are biases. It's everywhere. Cultural biases are everywhere. For instance, where I still remember when I went in my first trip to UK, I went to Victoria and Albert's museum, and in that museum, one lady kindly agreed to take me around without charging anything. I'm really thankful to her. And then she said, "Okay, I will take you to Renaissance gallery, then French Gothic gallery, then Italian Enlightenment gallery, the Greece gallery. Oh, lots of gallery." I told her I want to see something from India. Like Kohinoor. Of course, Kohinoor diamond is in the Tower Bridge gallery. So I asked her to show us something from India. Of course, there are a lot of paintings from Raja Ravivarma there. Then she told me, "Well, I'm sorry to say that the artwork from India is classified under natural history. You will find them in Natural History Museum, not in Victoria and Albert's Museum." I was shocked. Why it's natural history? Why it's not art? She said that it is all about the British colonial mentality. This art in India, it's not really art for them. It's cultural bias, friends. It's all cultural bias. So there are several such cognitive biases that we really have to be worried about. So another very famous bias is known as Texas sharpshooter fallacy. Think of a war, and you randomly shoot with your shotgun just 2 bullets, right, onto that wall. You now have got 2 holes. Somewhere randomly just have 2 holes. Then what do? You make a very beautiful diagram of a bull in such a way that these holes are exactly on its eyes. Then you call all your friends. "Oh, friends, come on, look how how great a sharpshooter I was. I was aiming sharply on its eyes, and then I shot onto it." That is called Texas sharpshooter bias. It happens everywhere, friends. Harking is an example of this Texas sharpshooter in researches. After the results are known, you modify your prior hypothesis and you hypothesize. Hypothesis after the results are known as HARK. That is an example of Texas sharpshooter bias. And that is the reason these days it has become a common practice to pre-register your experiments. So if you submit your paper to standard journals like Nature, they will ask you, where is the pre-registration DOI? They also want to see your raw data. In Nature, Nature has its own server called Lab Archives. It's an online platform for putting your primary data. For instance, your microplate reader, Excel sheet, right? Whenever you generate it, it has got a metadata. You upload it. So this Lab Archive will not let you to edit it. That is the thing. So if you're writing these things in your paper with your pen or pencil, smart people do that with the pencil, so that you can cherry pick later, so that you can commit Texas sharpshooter fallacy. You can erase it, you can modify, you can tweak it. All unethical practices, you can do it, but not in Lab Archives. So you can only append it. So the moment you upload a data, it will generate a DOI, and that is static. You can only send revision to that file later. So pre-registration as well as raw data archiving to a certain extent can prevent these most of the cognitive biases. And it's not just cognitive bias. We have a lot of logical fallacies too. So logical fallacies are well known. It is basically a formal fallacy on our argument. So certain patterns of our arguments, philosophers for thousands of years, they have already characterized. These are, these are the problems with the way you formulate your arguments. For instance, if I say, 21-year-old Indian can legally get married in India. Why? Because it's legal, you see. So what I said to you is just nonsense. It is just something called circular logic or circular bias, so circular reasoning. So that kind of argument itself has an issue with it. Another example would be ad populum, argumentum ad populum. Many people think that if so many people believe in something, it must be true. Nothing like that, so truth is not decided by how many people believe in it. Famously said by Bruno. Bruno was an Italian, and he made only one mistake. He simply supported his compatriot, the Copernicus. What Copernicus said is correct. That is what the Bruno said, that Earth is only a planet revolving around sun. But the clergyman during his time in Italy, these Catholics, they had no tolerance. They were zero tolerant about anything which is even indirectly criticizing the Bible. Then what they did to Bruno? He was killed by burning alive, friends. So that is what has happened to Bruno. So yes, so that is what ad populum bias is very well known. So many people believe in myth. So unlearning is part of cognitive bias, this critical thinking. We have to unlearn so many myths. For instance, many people believe, one of the very popular, very interesting, I have written some of the very famous myth in my blog as well. I've covered in YouTube too. So one of the very famous myth which I really like is breakfast is the most essential meal of the day. Everybody says that, right? Today's grandmothers say, oh, well, it's very well known. Our forefathers and foremothers from time immemorial, from Puranas, we were saying like that. Breakfast is the most essential meal of the day. Do you know the origin of this? It was invented by American industrialist called Kellogg. Kellogg invented this tagline, advertisement tagline, because he wanted to sell his breakfast cereal, friends. For thousands of years, if you look at our own Homo sapiens evolutionary legacy, days would pass without us eating a single food. Then when we get the food, we feast on it. Then days would go. It was completely non-linear pattern of food. So fasting is very common to us, but not the breakfast. Breakfast is something very new. Here is another example. From moon, if you go to the moon, you can see only one man-made structure. Human created structure from the moon on Earth. So which man-made structure on Earth is visible from the moon? Everybody knows the answer, because it is a common quiz question, right? Your kids can easily say, oh, well, I know the answer. It is Great Wall of China. You guessed it right. But how many of you know that it is also a myth? Replace, believe it or not, it was a cartoon. It's a comic series in American cartoon show in 1910s and 1920s in the US. They simply said it as a joke. And everybody thought, oh, wow, Americans are saying it must be true. No, it was completely, it's just a myth. So that is something called ad populum, right? Popular belief, argumentum ad populum. Right. So yes, so many such myths are there. Ad hominem is the lowest quality, right? Graham's hierarchy of arguments. So highest quality is you're attacking the center argument. right? When another person is arguing something, you're attacking the center argument. That has to be the style of the critics. When you're writing a proper paper, you should attack the center argument of the other person. That is absolutely fine. What if instead of attacking the argument, for example, BJP Congress or BJP whatever, so the Prime Minister Modi, if you want to criticize whatever the Prime Minister said, and if you want to criticize his argument by saying, well, Prime Minister, you don't have a PhD, you are a tea seller, and therefore what you say is wrong. That is called ad hominem attack. Instead of attacking the argument, you are attacking the person's credibility. Very cheap kind of argumentation, right? Ad hominem. So there is another kind of logical fallacy, ad hominem logical fallacy. Another very fancy sounding logical fallacy is called post hoc ergo propter hoc. Something happened before and therefore that caused it. For instance, COVID-19, right? So COVID-19 came after the China started a virology lab in Wuhan. Therefore, it was leaked from Chinese virology lab. Well, we still don't have any substantial evidence to say like that. But anyway, that argument do suffer from post hoc ergo propter hoc. Here is another easy to understand example. Rooster crows just before the sun has risen. Therefore, rooster causes sun to rise. Right? How nonsensical that argument structure goes, right? That is called post hoc ergo propter hoc. There is yet another of the logical fallacy is called ignoratio elenchi, missing the point. Ignoratio elenchi. During my childhood days, in my house, we used to read Madhubhumi paper. One of the very good paper in Kerala, Madhubhumi. So in Madhubhumi, during my school days, I still remember on the front page, on top right and top left, there used to be some box ad. And the box ad will say, well, please buy our chalice man. Do you have some problems with your marriage? Or do you want to earn more money? Or are you not getting married? No problem. You just buy our talisman and just tie it, Yes, so these are holy talisman. Just buy it and certainly whatever your problem. Do you have some disease? Do you have leprosy? No problem. Just buy it, our product and just tie it on your hand and suddenly everything will be disappeared. And this ad will claim that these are government certified. Look at that. Is it cheating? Not cheating. If you read it carefully, they say, yes, it is certified by GMP. They will also put some number. What is this GMP? Good manufacturing practices. So if you follow set of manufacturing practices that it is not toxic or the proper safety precautions are taken in the factory, anything can get this kind of GMP certification. Like for example, bucket, mug, all these can be GMP certified, good manufacturing practices. What the readers like you and me miss is that it vouches for its efficacy. No, that is not what it meant. So it is tricking the other people to believe that government certified, that big, that big name, the government certified means that government is certifying the validity that the talisman can actually bring good omens to your life. Not at all. So that is called ignoratio elenchi. So if you learn all these things, friends, the kind of decisions that you make can remarkably be improved. Okay, so so it's not just this cognitive bias and logical fallacy, but also so many philosophical concepts. For instance, via negativa is one of the very important philosophical razor. I found it very useful. Many of the time we can bring remarkable progress to our life not by introducing some complicated solutions, but by removing the vices from our life. For instance, if you drink and if you smoke, then then you purchase some very expensive medical insurance that also covers the lung transplantation and liver transplantation. Why you want to go for such a very complicated solution? The simple solution exists to remove it. So simply bringing in more and more complication is not a solution. That is not optimal. But removing the vices from our life, right? For example, gym, yeah. So people drive 4-wheel drive, and then they don't even take the stairs in their work home, right? They take elevators, and they work in their air conditioned workplace the whole day, and then they go back to their home in air conditioned 4-wheel drive, very nice car, and then from home they go again to an air conditioned gym. And what they do, step up machines, or stationary bike. Why you want to go for such a huge complication, friends? The simplest solution is that simply take the stairs in your workplace. And if you can, instead of taking car to your workplace, simply ride a bicycle, right? So that is called via negativa approach, right? Or Occam's razor is also very closely related, right? Simple solution tend to be very elegant. Okay, so yes, so I would like to conclude this particular the critical thinking by summarizing that the critical thinking is all about being aware of various biases that skew our judgment, so that the kind of judgment that you make, the kind of decisions that you make are suboptimal. We have several beliefs, and always challenge your core belief, because if you believe in something very dearly, you can never able to learn anything. Here is an example. I went to Japan and I did my PhD. During those time, I had the tooth issue. I went to a dentist over there, and this lady dentist, she asked me, okay, you have some issue with your tooth. Well, Felix, do you know how to brush your teeth? I was so shocked. I thought like it is a passive, aggressive, racist remark. Then she asked me, okay. I said, well, I know how to brush my teeth. And she asked me, okay, show me how do you brush your teeth. I shown how I brush it. Then this doctor told me it is so suboptimal. That is not how to brush a teeth. The brushing, the bristles have to touch the gum and enamel. That area has to be, right? Not really on the enamel. That is wrong. Not in the gum. It has to be just an intersection of the two areas. And that, every single thing that we think that we already know, keep questioning your core belief. That is what I want to say here. A very famous quote by Marcus Aurelius is that it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. If you already know something, then you can never learn anything. Very similar Chinese proverb is that when student is ready, teacher appears. When the student is ready, means the student is ready to listen, then the teacher suddenly appears. When the student is really ready, teacher disappears. The second part of it, what does that mean? When the student is really ready means he or she is looking only to hear what he or she want to hear because of the belief. Then the teacher, whatever the teacher say, can never able to convince the student. You see, another very related quotation is that learning requires humility to accept you didn't know that. So that kind of humility, the humbleness that you really don't know something, otherwise how you can learn it, right? To learn, you have to be humble. So rethink, challenge your core belief, and always look out for some disconfirming evidence that is going to bring a lot of progress to your life. I would like to end here with the two quotes. Albert Einstein, he famously said that the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. It is not the ability to believe something so dearly, ability to change, to always question your core belief. And Albert Einstein, he said that. And Charles Darwin, he famously said that it's not the strongest of all the species that survive, or the most intelligent of all species that survive, but the one who is more responsive to change. So whichever species that adapts, that change, that is a species that can survive. Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm open for any questions.